Authorities say the body of 21-year-old Demartravion Trey Reed was found hanged from a tree by a faculty member near the pickleball court.
Friday afternoon, 21-year-old Demartravion Trey Reed calls his mother from his dorm room at Delta State University in Mississippi. His voice is full of excitement as he tells her how ready he is to start his college classes on Monday. This freshman from Grenada, Mississippi, has big dreams ahead of him, but by Monday morning at 7:05 a.m., Trey's lifeless body is discovered hanging from a tree near the campus pickleball courts. The staff member who found him immediately called police. Within hours, the entire university shut down. Classes canceled. The campus that should have been celebrating its 100th anniversary instead became a crime scene. Police Chief Michael Peeler quickly announced there was no foul play. The coroner backed him up, saying Trey had no broken bones, no cuts, no signs of violence. Case closed, they said, but Trey's family wasn't buying it. They claimed his body told a different story. Broken arms, a broken leg, bruises everywhere. And there was something else the police weren't talking about? Something that would make you think again? Before we go deep into what really happened to Trey Reed, smash that like button if you're ready for a case that will challenge everything you think you know about justice on college campuses. Because what Trey's father revealed about the days leading up to his son's death will shock you. And it might explain why a civil rights lawyer has taken this case, why the NAACP is demanding answers, and why the FBI is now watching. The question haunting everyone: did he really take his own life, or was Trey Reed murdered? Welcome to Crazy Dark Files. Right now, there are thousands of black college students across America who are experiencing racist harassment on their campuses. If you want to help spread awareness about campus racism and demand justice for students like Trey Reed, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Your action could help protect another young person in danger. Demartravion Reed, everyone called him Trey, was 21 years old and came from Grenada, Mississippi. He had just started his journey as a college freshman at Delta State University. For most kids, starting college is scary, but for Trey, it was the beginning of everything he had worked for. His mother remembers that Friday phone call like it was yesterday. Trey's voice was full of energy and excitement. He couldn't wait to start his classes on Monday. He talked about his professors, his dorm room, and all the things he wanted to accomplish. This wasn't a young man who was struggling or depressed. This was someone who saw his whole life ahead of him. He was excited to start classes today as a college freshman, his mother would later tell reporters. Those words hit different when you know what happened next. Trey's family was tight-knit. His father, Genesis Perry, was protective of his son and stayed in close contact with him during his time at college. His mother was his biggest supporter, always there when he needed to talk. They had raised a son who wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. But being a young black man on a college campus in Mississippi came with challenges that most students never have to face. Delta State University had over 2,600 students, and 42% of them were black. On paper, that sounds diverse, but numbers don't tell the whole story about what life was really like for students like Trey. According to his father, Trey had been dealing with racist harassment from other students. White students would drive around campus throwing trash at Trey and his friends while shouting racial slurs. This wasn't just one incident. It was happening over and over again. Most students would probably just try to ignore it and hope it stopped, but Trey wasn't built that way. He was the kind of person who believed in doing the right thing. When those students harassed him, he didn't just take it. He got their license plate numbers and reported them to the police. He believed the system would protect him. He thought if he followed the rules and reported the crimes, something would be done about it. But according to his father, the police did nothing with his complaints. Trey kept pushing. He put pressure on the police department because the harassment wasn't stopping. He wanted answers. He wanted protection. He wanted justice. But instead of getting help, his father says Trey started to feel like he was being targeted by the very people who were supposed to protect him. Genesis Perry claims his son began to fear for his life and felt targeted not just by the racist students, but by the police department itself. Think about that for a moment. Here's a 21-year-old college freshman who should be worried about exams and making friends. Instead, he's scared for his safety on his own campus. He's looking over his shoulder, wondering if the people who are supposed to serve and protect him are actually working against him. Trey's cousin became a voice for the family on social media after his death. She painted a picture of a young man who was loved by everyone who knew him. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump would later describe Trey as a young man full of promise and warmth, deeply loved and respected by all who knew him. This wasn't someone who was isolated or struggling alone. When hundreds of students gathered for a prayer vigil after his death, it showed how many people cared about him. The university president even spoke directly with Trey's family to express their heartbreak. But here's what makes this case so heartbreaking. Trey was doing everything right. He was getting an education. He was standing up to racism. He was reporting crimes to the police. He was following all the rules that society tells young black men to follow if they want to stay safe. And yet, on a Monday morning that should have been the start of another week of classes, another step toward his dreams, Trey Reed was found dead. His family refuses to believe he took his own life. They know their son. They know he was excited about his future. They know he was a fighter, not someone who would give up. The question that haunts them every day is simple. What really happened to their boy? Monday morning, September 15, 2025, started like any other day at Delta State University. Students were getting ready for classes. Faculty were preparing for another week of teaching. The campus was buzzing with excitement because this wasn't just any Monday. It was the start of the university's 100th anniversary celebration. Delta State was founded in September 1925 as Delta State Teachers College. A century later, they were ready to celebrate this huge milestone with special events, ceremonies, and activities planned throughout the day. But at exactly 7:05 a.m., everything changed. A staff member was walking near the pickleball courts in the central part of campus when they made a discovery that would haunt them forever. There, hanging from a tree, was the body of Demartravion, Trey Reed. The staff member immediately called campus police. Within minutes, the scene was swarming with officers. The area was blocked off. Students walking to early morning classes were turned away. What should have been a day of celebration became a day of horror. Delta State Police Chief Michael Peeler arrived on scene quickly. He took one look at the situation and made a decision that would spark controversy for months to come. Based on what he saw, Chief Peeler determined there were no signs of foul play, no evidence of a crime, no threat to other students. But the university wasn't taking any chances. By mid-morning, all classes were canceled. Every single event planned for the centennial celebration was called off. Students were told to stay in their dorms or go home. The campus that should have been filled with joy and celebration was instead filled with grief and confusion. University President Daniel Ennis had to make one of the hardest phone calls of his career. He contacted Trey's family personally to tell them what had happened and to express the university's heartbreak. The Bolivar County Coroner's Office was called to the scene. They took custody of Trey's body and announced they would conduct a full autopsy to determine the official cause of death. But even before those results came back, Chief Peeler was already telling reporters that this looked like he took his own life. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation was brought in to assist with the case. Local police and sheriff's deputies also responded. On paper, it looked like all the right agencies were involved and all the right procedures were being followed. But something else was happening that the officials couldn't control. Word was spreading fast across campus and social media. Students were texting each other, posting on Instagram and TikTok, trying to figure out what had happened to Trey. And then the videos started circulating. Someone had recorded footage of Trey's body hanging from the tree. The graphic images spread across social media platforms faster than the university could respond. Students were sharing the videos, commenting on them, speculating about what they meant. Trey's family was devastated. Not only had they lost their son, but now they had to watch strangers share videos of his dead body online. His mother called it a living nightmare and begged people to stop sharing the footage. She asked for privacy and respect as the family tried to process their grief. That evening, something beautiful happened. Hundreds of students gathered on campus for a prayer vigil to honor Trey's memory. They lit candles, shared stories, and supported each other through their grief. It showed that despite all the controversy and confusion, Trey had touched many lives during his short time at Delta State. The university opened the O.W. Riley Counseling Center to provide support for students and staff who were struggling with the news. Counselors were available around the clock to help anyone who needed to talk. But even as the campus tried to heal, questions were already being raised. Why was Chief Peeler so quick to rule out foul play? Why were the videos allowed to spread unchecked? And most importantly, why was a 21-year-old college freshman found dead on a tree just days after telling his mother how excited he was about his future? The official investigation was just beginning, but for Trey's family, the fight for answers was about to become their full-time job. Within hours of finding Trey's body, the official story was already being written. But what the authorities were saying and what Trey's family believed happened were two completely different stories. Police Chief Michael Peeler held a press conference that same Monday. Standing in front of cameras, he was clear and confident about what he had found. Based on our initial investigation, there are no signs of foul play, he announced. We do not believe there is any ongoing threat to students or faculty. Chief Peeler's message was simple. This was a tragic suicide. Nothing more, nothing less. Case closed.
Hanging from a tree central campus near the DSU pickleball courts. We later identified the male subject to be 21-year-old Demartravion Reed of Grenada, Mississippi. Mr. Reed's next of kin has been notified. At this time, there's no evidence of foul play.
The Bolivar County coroner, Randolph Seals Jr., backed up the police chief's story. After conducting a preliminary examination of Trey's body, Seals released a detailed statement that was meant to end all the speculation and rumors spreading online. Based on the preliminary examination, we can confirm that the deceased did not suffer any lacerations, contusions, compound fractures, broken bones, or injuries consistent with an assault, Seals wrote on his Facebook page. At this time, there is no evidence to suggest the individual was physically attacked before his death. The coroner was being very specific. No cuts, no bruises, no broken bones, no signs of a fight. According to the official medical examination, Trey Reed had taken his own life, and there was no evidence that anyone else was involved. Multiple law enforcement agencies were involved in the investigation. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation was assisting campus police. Local police and sheriff's deputies were also part of the team. With all these experienced investigators looking at the case, the official conclusion seemed solid, but Trey's family wasn't buying any of it. Almost immediately, family members started posting on social media that the official story was wrong. They claimed that when Trey's body was found, it told a very different story than what the coroner was reporting. According to the family, Trey had been found with both arms broken and one leg broken. They said his body was covered in bruises that showed he had been beaten before he died. These weren't minor injuries that could be missed during an examination. These were major injuries that would be impossible to overlook. The family's version of events painted a picture of violence and assault. They believed Trey had been attacked, beaten, and then hanged to make it look like he took his own life. In their minds, this wasn't a young man who had taken his own life. This was a young man who had been murdered. But here's where things get really complicated. The family's claims directly contradicted the official coroner's report. Either the coroner had somehow missed major injuries like broken bones and extensive bruising, or the family was wrong about what they believed had happened. Making matters worse, graphic videos and photos of Trey's body were spreading across social media platforms. Someone had recorded footage at the scene, and now anyone with a phone could see the disturbing images. The videos were being shared on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Trey's mother was heartbroken by the circulation of these videos. She made public pleas asking people to stop sharing the footage. "This is a living nightmare," she said. The family was already dealing with the worst loss imaginable, and now they had to watch strangers share videos of their son's dead body online. The family asked for privacy and respect during their time of grief. They begged people to think about how they would feel if it was their child's body being shared across the internet. But the videos kept spreading. Some people who saw the videos supported the family's claims that something wasn't right. They pointed to details in the footage that they believed showed signs of violence. Others looked at the same videos and saw what appeared to be a suicide scene. The contradiction between the official findings and the family's allegations created a divide that would only grow wider as time went on. On one side, you had law enforcement and medical professionals saying this was clearly a suicide with no evidence of foul play. On the other side, you had a grieving family saying their son had been murdered and the authorities were covering it up. Social media became a battleground where people argued about what really happened. Some users shared the family's posts demanding justice for Trey. Others shared the official statements from police and the coroner. The case was becoming less about finding the truth and more about choosing which version of events to believe. The family's pain was real and visible. They had lost their son, and they felt like the system was failing him even in death. They believed the investigation was rushed and incomplete. They wanted answers that the official investigation wasn't providing. But the authorities stood by their findings. They had followed proper procedures, involved multiple agencies, and conducted a thorough examination. From their perspective, the evidence was clear, and the family's grief was causing them to see things that weren't there. Pause for a moment and tell me in the comments, do you believe the official story, or do you think there's something darker happening here? What state are you watching from, and have you seen similar cases in your area where families disagreed with official findings? The truth is, cases like this show how complicated investigations can become when emotions run high and social media gets involved. But for Trey's family, this wasn't about complications or procedures. This was about getting justice for their son, and they were just getting started. Just when it seemed like the case might be settling into a typical family versus authorities dispute, Trey's father dropped a bombshell that changed everything. Genesis Perry, Trey's father, released a statement that painted a completely different picture of his son's final days. According to Perry, Trey hadn't just been struggling with normal college stress. He had been living in fear because of racist attacks on campus. Who was calling home talking about some of the racism he was experiencing along with some of his friends, Perry wrote in his statement. This wasn't just one bad incident that Trey had mentioned in passing. According to his father, Trey was regularly calling home to talk about the harassment he was facing. The details Perry shared were disturbing. He claimed that white students were riding around on campus throwing trash at them and calling them racial slurs. This wasn't subtle discrimination or microaggressions. This was open, aggressive, racist behavior happening right on campus. But here's what makes this even more shocking. Trey didn't just sit there and take it. According to his father, Trey was the kind of young man who believed in doing the right thing. When these incidents happened, he got the license plate numbers of the vehicles involved. Trey took those license plate numbers and reported them to the police. He followed the proper procedures. He gave law enforcement everything they needed to identify and arrest the people who were harassing him. He did exactly what you're supposed to do when you're the victim of a crime. But according to Perry, they did nothing. Think about that for a moment. A college student reports racist harassment, provides license plate numbers as evidence, and the police do nothing with that information. No arrests, no investigations, no follow-up, nothing. Perry's statement continued. Our son then began to put pressure on the police department because it was constantly happening and he hadn't heard back from the complaint he filed. Trey wasn't the type to just file a report and forget about it. When the police didn't respond to his initial complaint, he kept pushing. He wanted to know why nothing was being done. He wanted the harassment to stop. He wanted the people responsible to face consequences. But instead of getting help, Perry claims something much worse happened. He didn't just become a target for racism at Delta State, he became a target for the police department. According to his father, Trey started to believe that the police weren't just ignoring his complaints, they were actively working against him. The very people who were supposed to protect him had become part of the problem. Perry's most chilling claim was that Trey had begun to fear for his life. This wasn't a young man who was depressed or suicidal. This was a young man who was scared that someone was going to hurt him. These allegations completely reframe everything about Trey's death. If Perry's claims are true, then Trey wasn't just a college freshman who tragically took his own life. He was a young man who had been reporting racist crimes, pressuring police to do their jobs, and fearing for his safety in the days before his death. The timing becomes crucial when you look at it this way. Trey calls his mother on Friday, excited about starting classes. But, according to his father, he had also been dealing with ongoing racist harassment and police inaction. Then, by Monday morning, he's found dead. Perry's allegations also explain why the family was so quick to reject the suicide narrative. If Trey had been telling his parents about fearing for his life because of racist attacks and police targeting, then finding him dead would naturally make them suspicious. The location of Trey's death takes on new meaning too. He was found hanging from a tree on a college campus in Mississippi. For many people, especially in the black community, that image immediately brings up the history of lynching in the American South. Delta State University is located in Cleveland, Mississippi, just 30 miles from where Emmett Till's body was found in the Tallahatchie River in 1955. The historical context makes Perry's allegations even more powerful and disturbing. If Perry's claims are accurate, then this case isn't just about a college student's death. It's about racist harassment being ignored by authorities, a young man being targeted for standing up for himself, and a system that failed to protect someone who was asking for help. But these are still allegations. Perry's statement provides his version of what Trey told him, but there's no independent verification of these claims. The police haven't confirmed that Trey filed complaints about racist harassment. There's no public record of the license plate numbers he supposedly reported. This creates another layer of controversy in an already complicated case. The family is saying Trey was the victim of racist attacks and police targeting. The authorities are saying he died by suicide with no evidence of foul play. Someone's version of events is wrong. The question is, whose? When news of Trey Reed's death spread beyond the Delta State campus, it didn't take long for people to notice something that made this case even more haunting. Delta State University sits in Cleveland, Mississippi, just 30 miles from one of the most infamous locations in American civil rights history. In 1955, the mutilated body of 14-year-old Emmett Till was pulled from the Tallahatchie River near Glendora. A sign at the river landing still marks the spot where Till's body was discovered 70 years ago. The connection wasn't lost on anyone. A young black man found hanging from a tree in Mississippi, just miles from where Emmett Till was murdered. The historical weight of that location made Trey's death feel like more than just a tragedy. It felt like history repeating itself. The NAACP, America's oldest civil rights organization, wasn't going to stay quiet about this case. They released a statement that cut straight to the heart of what many people were thinking. You'd have to excuse our skepticism amidst growing racially motivated violence targeted at our communities across this nation, the NAACP posted on Instagram. The post included a picture that simply read, "A man was lynched yesterday," but it was their next statement that really grabbed attention. So while we await more formal autopsy reports and information, we offer this piece of history with a level of certainty. Our people have not historically hung ourselves from trees. That statement hit like a lightning bolt. The NAACP was saying what many people in the black community were already thinking. Throughout American history, when black people were found hanging from trees, it usually wasn't suicide. It was murder. It was lynching. It was racial terrorism. The organization wasn't just questioning the official findings in Trey's case. They were putting it in the context of centuries of violence against black Americans. They were saying that given this country's history, anytime a black person is found hanging from a tree, there should be serious questions asked. Within days of the NAACP's statement, one of the most famous civil rights attorneys in America got involved. Ben Crump announced that Trey's family had hired him to conduct an independent investigation into the death. Crump isn't just any lawyer. He's represented the families of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, George Floyd, and dozens of other high-profile cases involving Black victims. When Ben Crump takes a case, the whole country pays attention. Trey Reed was a young man full of promise and warmth, deeply loved and respected by all who knew him, Crump said in his statement. We cannot accept vague conclusions when so many questions remain. Crump made it clear that he wasn't going to rely on the local investigation. He was bringing in his own team of civil rights leaders and organizations to find out what really happened to Trey. This meant independent experts, independent investigators, and independent analysis of all the evidence. The involvement of both the NAACP and Ben Crump sent a message that this case was now being watched at the national level. This wasn't just a local story about a college student's death. This was a civil rights case with national importance. Even the FBI took notice. The FBI office in Jackson, Mississippi, released a statement saying they were poised to review the incident if local law enforcement found evidence of federal violations. While they weren't actively investigating yet, they were making it clear that they were watching and ready to step in if needed. The weight of history was now pressing down on everyone involved in this case. The local police, the university, the coroner. They all knew that the whole country was watching how they handled the death of Trey Reed. For Trey's family, having these powerful organizations on their side meant they finally had the resources to fight for the truth about what happened to their son. As the case gained national attention, the investigation became more complex than anyone had expected. What started as a local campus incident was now involving multiple agencies and attracting scrutiny from across the country. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation was working alongside Delta State Campus Police. But they weren't the only ones looking into Trey's death. Local police and sheriff's deputies were also part of the investigation team. On paper, it looked like all the right people were involved and following proper procedures. But having multiple agencies involved also meant multiple perspectives on what had happened. Each agency had its own protocols, its own way of handling evidence, and its own conclusions about what the facts meant. Delta State University found itself in damage control mode. This was supposed to be their centennial celebration year, 100 years of educating students. Instead, they were dealing with a death on campus, national media attention, and serious questions about student safety. As we wrap up this case, the truth about what happened to Demartravion Trey Reed remains unclear. The official investigation is still ongoing, with multiple agencies working to determine exactly how and why a 21-year-old college freshman ended up dead on his campus. The coroner maintains that there's no evidence of foul play, no broken bones, no signs of assault, no indication that anyone else was involved in Trey's death. The police continue to treat this as though he took his own life while they wait for the final autopsy result. But Trey's family refuses to accept that explanation. They believe their son was murdered and they're not backing down from that position. With Ben Crump leading their legal team and the NAACP supporting their cause, they have powerful allies in their fight for answers. What do you think really happened to Trey Reed? Was this a tragic suicide or something far more serious? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what state you're watching from. One thing is certain, Trey Reed was a young man with dreams, a family who loved him, and a future that was cut short. Whether he died by suicide or was murdered, his death represents a loss that his family and community will never fully recover from. Don't forget to subscribe for more cases that demand justice, and remember Trey's family's powerful message. What's done in the dark will come to light. The fight for truth continues.